Do you have a busy brain? Do you long for greater peace of mind but struggle to slow down? You are in for a treat. Camille Smith, founder of Restoration Yoga, joins me today. Camille is a fellow hyperachiever who discovered yoga to be a vehicle that helps to grab all the parts of her that get swept away in busyness and bring her back to feeling centered and calm. Yoga is medicine for calming her mind, tuning into her body, restoring her energy, and finding deeper meaning and connection to all the things that make up her busy life. Don't worry, if getting quiet and tuning into your body feels out of reach, Camille shares some really simple, tangible ways to start. In this conversation, we talk about true caring for your mind, body, soul, and spirit. We talk about the challenges of getting quiet and the benefits when we're willing to stop. Camille shares how our bodies are a powerful messenger when we're willing to get quiet enough to listen. Whether you're trying to figure out your next steps, struggling with how to handle the circumstances you find yourself, or seeking more quiet, purpose, and meaning in your daily life, listening to Camille will be a welcome retreat. I found myself settling in and feeling very calm just hanging out with her, and I think you will too. Camille and I are both presenting at the Mindwell Mini Retreat on March 3rd. It's an afternoon event in Tempe, Arizona. You can attend in person or get a virtual ticket. You can find out all the details and save your spot. There's a link in the show notes. I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently. Whether you feel stuck in survival, navigating a change, or seeking more for your life, may this podcast be your weekly nudge to take a risk to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. After a decade of coaching individuals from corporate leaders to creative artists to multi-million-dollar CEOs, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. Hey, Differently listeners, I'm so excited to have a very special guest today, Camille Smith, and we met officially not that long ago, but I think we've been in the Mindwell collective group together for a while. And I'm just so excited to have you share your wisdom and story with us today. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So give everyone a sense of kind of where you are in your life. We'll paint a little picture of the chapter you're in at this moment.
Okay. I will do my best to do that. So I am, paint a picture of where I am in my life. So I love the work that I do. So I'll start with that and then go outward. I've been teaching yoga for years. So that's kind of what I do. I spend my days, preparing classes, teaching classes and whatnot. And I also am a trauma integration coach. I work one-on-one with people. And, I've gone through a lot of different things, different hats that I've worn in my career. And to bring me to the point that I'm at now, where I feel confident, I feel comfortable, and really just happy to be here. I've got a family. I work from home. My children are grown, although I do have one son who is special needs, who lives here. And we just kind of have a good rhythm in our life, knock wood. Mm-hmm. And I'm a people person. I love to connect with other people. And the work that I do is very fulfilling. And I feel kind of peaceful right now. You caught me on a good day.
I love that. So I'm really curious, Camille, what yoga has meant in your life. How did it come into your life? And what has it been for you in your life?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I love your podcast, and I've listened to it, and the whole hyperachiever thing. The first time I listened to it, I'm like, oh yeah, now I know why we're connected. I had never heard that term, believe it or not. I had never heard hyperachiever. And I'm like, oh, now I know what that's describing me.
Mm.
So to let you know, it kind of has connected me with the need to slow down. And because I have such a busy brain and a need, it's like a hamster on a wheel to go and do and go and do. And I've done a lot of coaching or been coached a lot on how to kind of slow that down. But really, yoga has been the thing I would say that has helped me the most to find balance. I mean, that doesn't ever go away. And a lot of people assume since I teach yoga and I teach meditation, you must be a totally, Zen person. But actually, that's not like the true me. The true me is like, go, go, go. I wake up in the morning and I just can't wait to start running. And I always tease my husband because he's like, why don't you just lay here for a little while? And I'm like, I can't. I feel like I'm getting bed sores. I got to get up, I feel like I'm jumping out of my skin to start. And yoga has really helped me calm down. It's helped me connect, all parts of my body, mind, body, spirit. The word yoga is from the word yuj, that means to yoke those three things together. And finding, I'm actually a very busy, like movement wise, I love to be active. And so being able to do yoga, which is active, also integrating those other parts, it's been like such a blessing. It's been a godsend for me to find it and to really sink into it so much so that I am able to teach it. Anything that I learn, if I love it a lot, I need to get it all. I always say, get it all inside of me, all the way. So well that I could teach it. And that's what yoga is for me.
That is so beautiful. I think it's so important what you said, that, because you're a yoga teacher, people think you're all Zen and all that. I can so relate to that because I think the work I do, because I have to practice it every day. I not only have to practice it, I have to teach it every day. I need it so much. I need to calm my mind, manage my thoughts because I have a very busy brain. And the work I do helps to calm and root me and, all of that. And I need extra of that. So I think that's why I'm a teacher.
Oh, I hear you, sister. You got to get it all the way so that you could, to teach it outward. Yes.
Yeah.
Simpatico.
And then I also heard somebody say something last week. I was having coffee with a friend and she was talking about this pastor who was doing this sermon and he had said he was an introvert. And she was like, I was so surprised to hear that he was an introvert because he does not come across that way. And she said, and then I realized that he's operating in his God-given strength. That's why he can do what he does. But to restore himself and to get energy, he has to get quiet. And I feel that I resonate with that too. And it sounds like you do too.
Oh, 100%. I know when I'm going off course because the voices, they get louder and louder. And I just can't stop. I love to create programs and events and messages and everything, classes. And it's like I can't get enough of it. I start to go kind of crazy. And usually the cues outside of me, like my family members or friends will be like, are you okay? And that's when I know I need to bring it in and get quiet and just like get in tune, with God and hear, okay, what do you want me to be doing? That's when I can tell I've gone off path. Like, okay, slow down, get quiet and figure out what I need to be doing. I can totally relate to that.
Wow. We are soul sisters because the creativity thing this year, I saw it more than ever that I get myself overstimulated in creating, and it can be a good thing, right? Sometimes we get
it's so fun,
addicted to good things, and it is so fun. And I can get lost creating, and then I'm overstimulated, and then I have a hard time resting or sleeping at night. And I really have to learn to manage and watch that. Yeah.
Well, because after the creation, there's the, then what do you do with it? Then you have to birth it. And that takes energy too. So you could really be on that hamster wheel, ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. So for sure.
100%. And this year is really about like finishing things and implementing things I've created. And
Yes.
every time I have like this new idea, it's like a joke in our house that like, go look because you probably already created this.
Yes.
And
Oh
most of
my
the
gosh, that's
time
so
I
funny.
have already written something about it, or it's crazy. It's crazy making. Okay. So I have a question for you. So I, whenever I hear the word like self care, whenever I hear like that's just like been such a popular word in our world
Oh
for a
yeah.
while now. And when I hear it, like on the outside, people would be like, of course I support self care. But when I hear that word, I like cringe inside. And I'm
Yes.
curious, like at the very core of it, I believe that we have to care for ourselves, our bodies, our minds, right? Like I believe that.
Yeah.
But what it has
Yeah.
become is not in alignment for me. And so I'm curious what you believe about that.
Oh, well, how fun, Carla. We're going to go there, right? So, first of all, I'm with you with the cringy thing, cringeworthy, because self care can be, it's like a trendy, it's probably trending right now, right? Hashtag self care. Um, it's really popular right now, and I've thought a lot about it. In fact, I wrote an article a couple years about self care, and what my feeling is about it. Most people, and I used to think of it this way: self care is like making sure that you take a bath, a bubble bath, that you get your nails done, that you do all of these you get a massage. That's kind of the way that I used to look at self-care. Or you binge your favorite programs on Netflix, or also eating right, all of those things. But recently I've started to really dig deeper into what that means to care for my soul, like to answer my soul's call to, it used to be enough to just any kind of self care was like laying on the couch. It usually involved watching some kind of screen and probably eating some kind of chocolate. That was like my ultimate self care. But it came to the point where it just wasn't satisfying anymore. Like my soul wanted more. And I started to explore, what does self care really mean? And we can just pick a different word instead of self care if it's still cringy. But basically, finding things that really fill me up. So it's not enough to just like, oh, I feel satisfied because I watched this or I ate this or whatever. It's like, fill yourself up with something that lights you up, that gives you more energy, like having a really great conversation with a friend you haven't talked to in years, or, going outside and just looking at the clouds, laying on your yard and looking up, or whatever it is, something that
Mhm.
really fills your soul. And like I said, I agree with you about the word choice, but I just look at it differently than I used to. And so when I talk about that, that's what I'm talking about. Something that really helps you have more of yourself that you can, spread around.
Mm. Yeah, it's beautiful. It is. It's something that's more lasting. It's something that's more sustainable. It's something that sustains you for longer periods of time, right? And I
Yeah.
think back to, a lot of years of my life, just kind of going through the motions and checking the boxes. And if everything was lining up in the outer world, then I felt pretty good. But the moment that stuff went away, then I felt like crap. And it would just then I have to be more and do more and try harder. And it was so exhausting. And you talked about, like the go and do,
Yeah.
go and do. I would like go, 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 crash, go, 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 crash. And yeah, I had to
Yeah.
learn to start to take better care of myself mentally, spiritually, physically. And I think in doing that, I also got in touch with like the real things that make my life meaningful, or the real things that,
Yeah.
fill your cup. And so when was that moment for you of like, was there a pivot moment where, or kind of a wake up moment for you?
Um, where I kind of felt that.
Like where you made
Is
some
that the
real
question?
changes in your life. Yeah. To start
Oh, yeah.
doing
Yeah.
some of the deeper work
I,
or seeking God or whatever that was for you.
yeah. I think that yoga, everything you were just saying is why I do yoga, because that is the vehicle that I have used to grab all of those parts of myself that go crazy off, off the hamster wheel or however you want to say it,
Yeah.
bring all those strands back. And, I teach Christ-centered yoga, which I absolutely love. And when I discovered what that was, I never heard of it before. A friend of mine who I actually grew up with was teaching it and invited me to her class, and I went. And when I was there, I was like, what is this? Like, it was such a deep connection for me with the movement of my body, the quiet, and my faith, my
Mm.
belief in Christ. All of those got brought together. And I felt like I don't even know how to describe it. It felt like being at church on my mat, like
Mm.
feeling the spirit and just really feeling that richness and thinking, I really like this. Because at the time I was teaching yoga, I was teaching kind of a yoga fusion class. My teaching was at the gym for several years, and I loved that. But this felt very different, and I just knew it was something that I needed to pursue. I pursued it and became trained in that, and that's what I do now. But that moment of being in that class was just a different experience that I hadn't had before, and my soul kind of woke up in a different way. I loved it.
Mm. Yeah. When you said that, I just saw like the clouds opening, the sky opening up, right? It's like, and
Ah!
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the angels sang and all that. I mean,
I,
it wasn't a showy kind of class or anything,
yeah.
but I did feel different inside.
Hmm. You reminded me, like, I remember doing, it might have even been my first yoga class. I was a new mom and I went into this yoga class and I literally was just in tears almost the entire class. And I think it was the
Yeah.
first time I had like gotten quiet. Like it almost makes me emotional now, but I think it was the first time I'd gotten quiet in a really long time. And so I would love to hear you kind of speak to that. Like what happens when we get quiet and get in our bodies and what becomes available?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So when you were just talking, the image I had was of when you said you were crying. First of all, I've had that experience myself and also teaching other people where they have some kind of emotional release during class. And I remember a friend of mine, we were doing a trade. She's a marketing expert. And I said, I'll teach you and you help me with marketing. And she was she cried and she was so embarrassed and so apologetic afterwards about, I don't know what happened and I'm so sorry. And I said, that's normal.
Mm.
Like that's just your body talking. Your body was talking to you in that moment. And, when I used to teach, well, still, when I used to teach in studio, there would be times, especially at the gym, where we would get to the end of the class, which is, they call it the shavasana or the guided meditation, the relaxation portion of
Mm-hmm.
class. Some people would quietly get up and roll their mat up and they would leave. And I always thought, this is the best part. Why would you leave during that? But I also understood that for some people, getting that quiet, their body, their head, their minds, their thoughts would get really loud, so much so that they didn't want to have that experience.
Mm.
And but that's where, whenever you feel that, that's when you know you need to stay, right? That's your signal, like, oh, I need to be here and be quiet, because that's when your body feels safe enough to communicate with you. And that's another thing I love about yoga is I've learned, oh, there's something going on over there on that side of my body. Or, oh, I have this unprocessed emotion that I can feel in my heart and moving up into my throat. And, it's an exploratory place on your mat where you can examine who has the time and the space to do that in their normal
Mm.
life. When you get into bed, you just pass out, right? I mean, you just go to sleep. You're not exploring what's happening or holding space for yourself to see what sensations are floating up for you to be aware of. We just don't ordinarily, most people don't set aside time for that. But that's an important part of learning more about ourselves and the signals that we can hear and receive when we make time for it.
It's so fascinating because, I mean, I see it in my own life, but also the people I work with, like we're so busy. And busyness is a distraction, right? From like actually getting quiet and listening. And I find when
Yeah.
people, journaling and writing is kind of, my tool inside of the work I do. And for me, it's been a
Yeah.
way to get quiet, a way to listen, a way to process. But I have had to learn how to, like, that my body has so many important messages too, and to listen to that. And so why do we get so disconnected from our bodies? And we're not really ever taught to integrate, right? Or yoke those things. I love how you shared that root word. But what is possible for people in doing that more? Like people listening, what becomes available when we do that, and how do we do that?
Yeah. So much. Like it kind of goes along with meditation too, the ability to kind of quiet and still the mind. I teach a format. I teach several formats. One is called Yoga Nidra, which in Sanskrit, Nidra means sleep. So it's a very profound, systematic, guided meditation that allows you to just go through the different parts of your body and feel that intense quiet and relaxation isn't even the right word for it. It's so, it fills you up. It's like warm water. It just is so comforting. And we don't know it if we've never been there. And like you said, we're not really taught how to do this. It depends on the household you were raised in. Maybe some people are, were taught to have time to themselves, but usually we're just busy. We're just busy is our norm. And if we're not busy, we feel like we're wasting time, but there's a difference between like wasting time or just, on purpose choosing to not do. Like non-doing is a thing. It's just being and observing. And it sounds so weird in our culture. We're not taught that way, but in other cultures in the world, they are taught that way. And so it doesn't seem so strange to be, just closing your eyes and just being still, not listening to something or not watching something, just being with yourself. The more you do it, the more you crave it. And the more we're talking about self-care, the more it fills you up at a deeper level. And you discover there's more of yourself. There's more there. It's just so many benefits. I mean, I could talk all day about that because of the experiences that I've had.
There's more there beyond like being a producing machine, right? Like I just know like so much of my life was just all about doing. And my husband is very much on the being side. Like he is constantly my reminder of like what, here's what you're doing, but who are you being? Right. And that's been such an important part of our relationship. And I've learned so much watching him because he's very comfortable in that space. And that was a very uncomfortable space for me because I didn't feel, I just felt like I always had to be doing to be sort of a worthy human being, right? And I love and I love doing. I love being busy, but I've really had to learn how to blend those two things together so that I could build a life, a meaningful life. And okay.
It can be more intentional that way.
Yes. Okay.
Instead of just happening.
Yes. Okay. So kind of switching gears. I would love, I know you shared a little bit about your journey with your son when you and I talked before. And I would love if you're willing to share some of that journey because I think people listening, I just know there's going to be something for somebody in that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I have three children. I have two daughters and a son. My son, when he was 3, was diagnosed with autism and sensory integration disorder. At the time, we were living in Bangkok, Thailand, which was a super fun adventure. But when that happened, we had to kind of change our plans and come back to the States. And, we didn't, he's 26 now. So at that time, there wasn't as much information and resources for that. And so we were like, well, I guess we're going home and we're going to figure out how to help him, what to do. And so we did that and started doing a lot of different sorts of therapies. And almost immediately, I started to be introduced to things that were kind of outside the Western box of medicine. And I really do credit the way that I think now and the work that I do kind of as a healer to that early experience of having to look outside of the box of what, Western medicine was offering, which was basically speech therapy and, OT. I'm like, that's all you got for me? Like, that's it?
Wow.
And so, when you start to look, then other people would come into my sphere and say, hey, have you thought about, this or, oils or so many things. And so I started to think differently and to be more open-minded. Ordinarily before that, and I still am recovering, very kind of controlling, thinking, problem-solving kind of person. And so that helped kind of crack open the way that I looked at things and willing to try new and different things and see, how he was reacting to those things. But I really feel like his experience, our experience together, taught me so much about, looking outside, but also we've talked about going, doing. I learned the cycle because my natural self was, try to solve this problem. I came from a background, a very busy background. The Hex, that's my name, are like workers. That is what we do. We work. When we're together, we work some more. That's what we do. And I feel like that's a very deep part of who I am. So when this kind of problem came along, trying to help him, I would work so hard. I would research. I would do all these things, talk to so many people. And then eventually I would burn out. I would flame out. And I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. And I would just kind of go quiet for a while. Not a good quiet, but just like give up quiet. And then when I felt like I had that fire grow again in me, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready again. Let me go do all these things, be busy, try the supplements, take him to this doctor, take him to this therapy. I haven't tried this one yet. Let's try that. And then it was a cycle for me of doing, crash. And, eventually I had to just realize, first of all, I am not the healer. I'm not the healer. He already has a savior. It's not me. And I had to pass that along and just be like, I'm just here to guide and to love him. And I had to rethink how I was going to handle his problem. And I see it less of a problem now because of all the blessings being his mother has brought into my life. But there was a long time where I was doing that cycle of too much. I didn't think it was too much, but now looking back, I can see, and then flame out and take a rest. So that's another way that I had to find something that was going to help me be more even and more steady. And like you, my husband is that for me. I always tell him, you anchor me. Like, I feel like you grab me and bring me out of the clouds when I'm trying to do all these things. I'm out in orbit, and then you just pull me back down. And right?
God bless them. Yes.
Yes. Well, just imagine if there were two people like that in a relationship.
I can't imagine.
It doesn't work.
No.
Does not work that way. I'm convinced.
Yes.
Yin and yang.
Yes. Wow.
You need both.
Something really stood out to me in your story is like the realization of like that your role could shift and the way that you saw your role. And I mean, I felt like a surrendering, right? And
Yes.
I had a client once tell me she was she was in her 60s, raising her grandson who was 5, and also the
Oh
primary
my goodness.
breadwinner in the home. And she told me that there was a moment in time where she was like, her mission in her mind was like to take care of this boy, right? Take care of him. Her mission was just to take care of him. She's going to provide for him and take care of him. And, it was like another job.
Yeah.
And she
Mm-hmm.
said there was a moment in time where she shifted to, I'm going to enjoy him. And she said that he literally relaxed. And I just thought that was
Yes.
so beautiful. And I can only imagine that there probably was some kind of shift like that for your son too, as you
Uh,
shifted.
It happens still all the time. I know when I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting too intense. And then when I can make the shift, the other thing about my son is he's very empathic, which means he feels other people's feelings, which is one reason he likes to not be around too many people at once because it's too
Sure.
overstimulating. But he is very tuned in to me. He can come in the room and immediately he knows when something is off. And so that's been a gift for me to see him. But also, I have to work hard to keep myself in a place where he can relax. The poor guy. This world is so ramped up. It's not easy for him. I did have one quick story I want to share, if that's
Yeah,
okay, that I think will
please.
illustrate this. So, when he was young, shortly after we came back from Bangkok, so he was 3-ish, 3.5 maybe, and I would do these call and cry. That's another thing I used to do a lot, is call somebody and cry on the phone. It was
Call and
usually
cry.
my mom or a
I like
sister.
that. No,
Yeah, call and cry. And, it was just like drop it all over them. I'm like, this is so unfair. I don't know what to do. More crying, more crying. And I remember my mom said once to me, it was her turn to get the call and cry. She said, I said, I'm doing everything I can think of to try to heal him and try to fix him. And I'm praying so much, Heavenly Father, please, please, please help heal Emery. And she said, you might actually have to go through this.
mm-hmm.
And that was such an important thing for me to hear because, again, surrender. It wasn't that I had to fix him. I was thinking I had to fix him. It was my job to do enough things, to try enough therapies to find the right one so I could make him healed or fixed and not be the way that he was. And that was a turning point for me, is yes, I guess I'm going to go through this.
Wow. I mean, and this kind of circles back to like who you're being, right? Instead of like shifting from doing to like, who are we called to be in this moment? And that's a question I ask myself a lot. That's writing has really helped me to surrender things and to trust that what's in my path is in my path for a reason. And I can't always control what's happening or the circumstances or the other people, but I can always
Yeah.
come back to and kind of surrender to it and trust what's happening and ask, like, who am I called to be here? And
Yes.
yeah. And
Yeah.
how
I
we
love
show
that.
up to that makes a really big difference.
Yeah. There's a term that I've learned called presencing. I learned from one of my yoga mentors, and it basically means, have you heard that term before?
No.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's made up, but I still like it. So presencing means just being like as much of yourself as you can. I mean, the best part of yourself. Just that alone is healing and helpful to other people.
Mm.
So me, with the training that I've had, including parenting my son, is probably the most important training I've ever had, has helped me be a person that other people, when they're around me, they feel safe, they feel comfortable, they feel relaxed. And so we do that for the people around us by being our most authentic, self, just being there. That's all it is. It's not like you're doing anything in particular to help them. You're just being yourself there. You're presencing yourself. And that alone is a huge helpful thing. And I mean, you probably know people like that, right? Just when you're around them, that's all you need. You don't need them to do anything or say anything. Just let me be there.
It's so true. I mean, it's something I have to remind myself all the time in the work I do, because I can get in my mind wanting to make sure I'm being doing the work and being a good coach and doing all the things. And it's really none of that. The most powerful calls I have with people
Yeah,
are when I'm actually just really deeply present. And then trusting, right?
absolutely.
That the questions, then is when I really feel I can be a vessel for God to work through me. And
Oh,
often
I
the
love
things
that.
that come onto my heart are the questions that I'm provoked to ask. I can't tell you how many
Yeah,
times people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's funny you're asking that," or "I can't believe you just asked that question
yeah.
because this just happened," or there's always a synergy or some sort of link.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of takes us back
Mm-hmm.
to like being in our bodies, right? And listening and trusting and
Yeah,
getting quiet enough that we can get out of the
yeah.
way for greater things to
Oh yeah,
happen.
I love what you said about the vessel thing. That's huge because when you realize that's what you are, you're a conduit, you're a vessel, for God's love or whatever to come through you, and you said you got ideas for questions to ask and stuff. That's it takes the pressure off in a way if you can frame it that way, that you don't have to
Totally.
know everything, do everything. You're like, I'm just, I'll just be here for whatever inspiration comes through me. And it's always the best anyway, right?
It's always the best. Yes. It's always the best.
I love that.
Even for creativity and creative ideas, right? Like if we're open and willing,
Yeah.
then we can be, a vessel for those creative ideas. And there's so much there. And it did. I mean, you said like it takes the pressure
Yeah.
off so much, so much. If I can just get out of the
Yeah.
way, and set down the doing, there's so much more available. And I think, contrary to the hyperachiever brain, that when I get quiet, when I get in my body, when I do yoga, when I allow myself to rejuvenate, it always gives back to every part of my life and my business too. I
Hmm.
have to remember that. But it's so counterintuitive to what this driving energy inside of us thinks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you have to come. There's a term in the scriptures about coming to yourself. I think it's the prodigal son one, where he wakes up and he's like in the trough eating the pig's food and then he comes to himself. That's how I feel about doing yoga or getting quiet. It's a chance to come to yourself and see what's going on. When you're busy and you're doing, you can ignore a lot of things. Like when there's a noise in your car, what do? You just turn your car radio up, right? So you don't hear it. And we're like that with our bodies. We just don't want to, I don't want to look there. I don't want to see that ugly thing or that
That's so
painful thing. So
true.
I'm going to just keep moving and then I won't have to deal with it. But guess what? There's a book called Your Body Keeps the Score, and your body does keep the score. You can keep ignoring that sound, but eventually, your wheel's going to fall off or whatever.
Yeah,
Your body will have the last word.
it's so true. So let's give people listening some tangible, simple ways that if they're like, yeah, I want more of this in my life, how do I even begin? Um, I know with writing, a lot of times, like you just said, people are scared because they're scared of what they're going to find when they start writing or journaling, right? And I
Mhm.
always tell them, like,
Yeah.
almost the more afraid you feel, I believe the more treasure is there. That it in our
Yeah.
mind it feels scary, but if you're willing to, like you said, go through, there's something bigger and greater there available. So share
Mhm.
some simple ways that people could start to incorporate what we're talking about.
Well, I think with the getting quiet part, if you like yoga, if you aren't afraid to do yoga, and some people are, they've never done it. They're like, I can't put my head or my foot behind my head or whatever. There's lots of ways that you can get quiet. Little things like when I was teach meditation, I would say, just drive in your car without any sound. Like, don't have the radio, don't listen to a podcast, don't, whatever you usually listen to, just have nothing. You can just use that time to look outside, and there's a lot of things that you'll see that will delight you if you allow yourself to see that. So simple things like that. Or if you want to try, meditating, you don't have to lie down or sit and close your eyes. You can actually do moving meditations. You can walk. You can just take a walk and see how it feels when your foot hits the ground. And, that all goes along with being mindful. Mindfulness, which is paying attention on purpose, to a particular thing. And so there's a lot of little baby steps that you can take. And also just realizing that if you do have those uncomfortable feelings that float up, which they might, and they probably need to, all you have to do is allow it. Like, the reason it becomes big and ugly and hard to deal with is when you kind of squelch it back down. Like, think of a beach ball. If you're ever playing, it is full of air and you're in the water and you're just playing, you're trying to push it down, how hard it is to keep it down because it pops up again. That's how it is with those things that we refuse to see. So just recognizing that's just, okay, it feels a little uncomfortable, but it's just a sensation in my body. Like, it's not going to stay, because that's how we're emotional beings. Our emotions are, they're vibrations that we feel, and they ebb and they flow. And I like to think of myself like a filter. So, the emotion that I'm feeling is just moving through right now, and then it'll come out the backside, and then there'll be another one. So it's kind of a way of thinking about the sensations that you have, or not thinking about them. Picking just little ways you can practice, being quiet, or, just turn the screens off for a while. For a while I was doing on Sundays, I would just say, I'm not going to look at a screen. If you need to talk to me, you can call me. I just made up my own rules, right?
I love
I'm not going to look at text because that will lead me down a rabbit hole. And those were some really profound experiences that I have had. I also did a time where I just was quiet for 24 hours. I didn't speak a word. And I know people go on retreats to do that. For me, not speaking for 24 hours, oh my goodness, it was the hardest thing ever and the best thing ever.
Oh, I love that. I've always wanted to
They come together, right?
Yeah. Yes. Such good ideas. I've always wanted to do like a silent retreat of some kind, or like a silent hike, even like a 2-hour hike or something. Love that idea.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah.
Okay. So share, because I know you have classes, and I'm inspired to, because I know you can take your classes virtually, right? So tell us where we can find out about your classes and take those.
So all of my classes are online. I do teach in person live at retreats and special events, but on a regular basis from week to week. I teach 3 days a week, and I do live streams where people can tune in. My platform integrates with Zoom, but it doesn't matter where you are. I have members that are all over the country, and I love that, because before whoever was in my little neighborhood would come, to the studio, to my classes. And then also, if it doesn't jive with your schedule, I also have over 300 recorded classes of different formats on my platform that people can access anytime that it works for them. And I have a lot of members that it works better. They're not able to be there at 8:30 on Monday morning or whatever.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And what is your website?
It's www.restoration-yoga.com.
Awesome.
My company is Restoration Yoga. Yeah.
So good. So everybody check those out. And I just had the idea that, so Camille and I are both going to be speaking at the Mindwell retreat
Oh, that's right.
on March 3rd.
Yes.
And so I'm going to make sure this airs for that. And so we would love for you guys to tune into that. So I'm speaking on Be in Your Right Mind. And what are you speaking on?
Mine is 3 hacks for your nervous system.
Oh, perfect. So if you guys want to check that out, I believe it's at integratetrauma.com. Is it under the events?
Yes.
Or I'll put a link in the show notes for you.
Yeah.
So check that out.
Trauma. Mm-hmm.
Integrate Trauma. And you can, like I said, you can sign up virtually for a virtual ticket to that event. There's going to be so many great speakers. We're really excited for this. And then you can also attend in person if you're local to Arizona. So we would love to see you there either way. Camille, thank you so very much for this conversation.
Of course. This was a pleasure to talk to you, Carla. You've got a great way of presencing people, by the way. I can feel that from you. So awesome.
Thank you. I love that work that you're doing. I'm so glad that our paths have united. And for everybody listening, check out what Camille is doing. Incorporate some quiet into your life today. And I will see you next week. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, be sure to hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please help us spread the word and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.